Society and Youth Advisory Council. Clover, we are so excited to have you. Again, thank you
that
for
last
joining
one was a bit
us.
of a mouthful, wasn't it?
It is.
But absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And so, getting right into the meat of this, today our conversation revolves around what it means to meaningfully engage and empower young people. Indeed, the young people are the greatest source of hope for our planet. And of course, this passion and determination inspires all of us. But you all need our support, I think. Would you say that we as a society are doing enough to help activate and empower you, the generation of young people? And I'm gonna take this, this question goes to everyone. Let me start with Mucha, then Raphael, then Clover.
Thanks, and happy again to be here. I would say that the answer at a glance is definitely no. There is so much more that could be done in order to really empower youth to take up their place. But I think what's exciting to me, because I actually fall out of the category of youth, but what's exciting to me is seeing young people like Raphael and Clover who have taken it upon themselves to lead the charge. And I think that is a great inspiration, and that really highlights that we are moving forward as more and more young people take it upon themselves and don't wait to be asked to take up their positions of leadership. But I think there's definitely a lot more that could be done.
Thank you so much, Mucha. Raphael, what do you make of this? Are we doing enough?
I think increasingly people are realizing and acknowledging and recognizing the great importance of young people, not just as people with a problem, but also solution providers. And world over, we are seeing young people coming out and doing amazing stuff. But definitely, just like Mucha did say, I think there's a lot that still needs to be done in terms of ensuring that we believe in young people, we trust in them, we give them information, skills, we create awareness that is required, but we also Professor Wangari Maathai once said that we need to rise to new levels of consciousness. And I think truly the world needs to rise to new levels of consciousness and give young people a seat at the table. But there are three things that I think, first of all, that needs to be done. I think it's to ensure that young people are not locked in a waiting room, that they are somewhere and waiting somewhere for them to be called to do something. I think we need to move away from there. Also, like I did say, I think we need to start looking at young people not as people with a problem, but also solution providers. So we shouldn't just look at what they lack, but we should also see the capabilities that they have in terms of fresh ideas, in terms of creativity, in terms of energy. And I think lastly is to realize that youth are not leaders of tomorrow, but youth are shaping the future today. And so we need to recognize that and remove the barriers and provide the enablers that they need to be able to participate as change makers and create the impact that we need in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Raphael. Clover, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this question?
So I often find myself as the token young person on a panel. And I think a lot of business leaders, especially who I've worked with, and even policymakers, are quick to say, look at this generation of empowered young people kind of stepping up and taking ownership. And, we're standing here in solidarity. And yet that very rarely translates to actually putting the work in and supporting young people in a meaningful way. It's very easy to say young people are super powerful and capable, but unless you're actually creating opportunities for them to realize that potential, then it's going to be very difficult for them to step up in any meaningful way. And I think I've been really, really fortunate in that I've worked in 2 companies previously before starting Force of Nature, where I had a person in leadership kind of take me under their wing and invite me into those, rooms where decisions were being made, and not expect me to kind of come out with anything brilliant. A lot of the time I was just a fly on the wall, really like absorbing everything. And that was what actually equipped me with the skills to be able to do what I'm doing today. But very few leaders are actually showing the initiative and the foresight to create those spaces. And I think the education system is a really good example of this. You look at, the huge epidemic of mental health problems in our generation today. You look at the fact that so many young people, at least in the standardized education system in Europe, in the UK, leave school feeling really stupid, leave school feeling that they've never had the chance to actually discover where they're brightest and where they really shine, what their unique skills and talents are. And when it comes to climate change, the curriculum is an absolute joke. Young people aren't actually being equipped with the knowledge or skills to be able to solve the most pressing threat of our generation. And in fact, the reaction to young people coming out and saying, this is an issue that we're hugely distressed by and despairing of, has been to actually try and cut climate change out of the curriculum altogether, because they're saying, oh, it scares young people too much. So I think generally young people are really poorly equipped and are not being supported. And yet I think to both of the points previously, a lot of young people are saying, well, actually, we're not going to ask for permission anymore. So we're just going to kind of take ownership ourselves. And that's certainly what gives me so much hope.
Thank you so much. I'm hearing from the three of you, don't wait to be asked, don't go ahead, step into leadership. I'm hearing we need to shift our framing of young people, not just as people with a problem or people who are the problem, but also I'm hearing something really important about our curriculum and especially support for mental health and the transformation that needs to happen in our education system. Clover, I want to kind of delve a bit deeper into this conversation with you. But before I do, I just want to speak to our Facebook Live audience. Welcome. We are so glad that you're joining us. And for those of you who are joining us through Zoom, we are live on Facebook on the Wangari Maathai Foundation Facebook page. It's any of you who are joining through Facebook, please feel free to engage and ask your questions there, and they will be reflected on this side. And any of you on Zoom, again, feel free to chat in your questions, and we will have a question and answer session at the end of this conversation. Now, Clover, back to you. You are 21, and you're already the founder of Force of Nature and a voice in the climate movement. What did it take you to get your idea and passion off the ground, and how can different actors in our society support and show solidarity to young change makers such as yourself?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Force of Nature was really born out of the realization that the only reason I've arrived where I have today is because of access to opportunity and enormous kind of privilege afforded to me. I grew up in a household where my parents, didn't put any pressure on me to go down a particular career path. I went to school in Indonesia at a place called the Green School, where instead of asking young people to really pursue, convenient careers they have no love for, it asks us, which problems do you want to solve in the world? And so I had all of these opportunities from a really young age that equipped me with the kind of mindset and attitude to say, well, I want to take ownership of a problem and I have the initiative and skills to actually get there. And I looked around both at my peers and at young people from all corners of the world and saw just how little access to opportunity there really was. And I also saw the incredible inequality in terms of the kind of platform that I had access to versus lots of young people on the front lines of this movement. So, I often find myself speaking in air-conditioned rooms that frontline activists will never have access to. And I remember feeling that really distinctly the first time I heard Elizabeth speaking, Elizabeth Watutu, who invited me here today. I was walking past her speaking session at COP25 last year, and she was speaking such truth to power, and her message was so incredibly articulate and impassioned and powerful. And I was like, how is this the first time I'm ever hearing her? And I think that's the case for so many young people around the world. And so Force of Nature was really born out of how do we give more platform to young people? How do we support young people to shift from a place of feeling entirely overwhelmed and powerless to create change to a state where they're really resilient and really capable of actually taking ownership of the problems in their community, on the global stage, and feeling capable of actually solving them. And to Raphael's point, appreciating that young people, are really good at articulating the problems and just as good at, delivering solutions. I think one of the things that distinguishes young people is that, they haven't been around long enough to really let society clip the wings of their imaginations. And so we have this incredible capacity to actually imagine how we would do things differently. We haven't been around in the status quo for so long that we think, okay, well, that's just how things have always been done and they can't change. Climate change demands really creative, disruptive solutions, which I believe young people, especially on the front lines of this movement, are best placed to actually deliver. In terms of how that translates to key stakeholders, I think for one, parents really supporting young people to hold space for the feelings that these problems create. A lot of our research at Force of Nature is around eco-anxiety and feelings of grief and frustration and anger that come up in the face of climate change and social injustice, biodiversity collapse. A lot of adults and people in power are really scared by those emotions and don't really want to create space for them. They want to protect young people by kind of sweeping them under the rug. So instead, supporting them to hold space and actually think about how to critically translate those feelings, which are our superpowers, into tangible action is a really powerful way of doing that. And again, inviting a diversity of voices into those spaces where decisions are being made. As I mentioned, I'm often the token young person in a room. I can only speak to my experience, and it has been a very privileged one at that. And so everything that we do is how do we get young voices in these spaces who are seeing these problems unfold in real time, and how do we actually give them platform and opportunity to ideate on the solutions?
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm hearing a lot about opportunity and what opportunity means, and the work that you're doing around creating platforms, shifting young people from powerlessness and having the idea of holding space is a really powerful one. I want to move now to Raphael. Before coming to you, Mucha, Raphael, you're a youth advocate who's also serving in the board of different global networks that deal with young people. Where are these opportunities that we have created or are planning to create for young people to shine and flourish? Where are those opportunities?
Thanks so much, Wanjiru. And just building on Clover's point, I think one of the things we must realize is that young people are not asking for anything else. They're just asking for opportunity. And so we need to provide them with that opportunity and, opportunity to participate as equal members of the society, to try and help in the growth and transformation that is required. That is all that young people are asking for. And so we need to lift those barriers to enable youth and to participate effectively. Secondly, I think over the years and for a long time, young people have always been excluded from processes, whether we are talking about decision-making process, whether we are talking about development processes, young people are always left out. And there's always a thought that when we exclude the youth, it is young people, it is the youth who suffer. Truly, of course, youth are at a disadvantage whenever they are excluded. But we must also realize that exclusion does not only impact negatively on the youth, it also impacts negatively on the entire society. Because when we exclude the youth, we miss out on the fresh ideas, we miss out on the creativity of young people, we miss out on their energy. So by including the youth, we are not doing them a favor. We are just doing the right thing that can enable the society to move forward. So I don't think we should look at it as a charitable thing or a favor that we are doing youth by involving them or by including them in processes. We must realize that that is so important if we want to make headway as a society. The third thing, and which comes to your question in terms of opportunities, I think largely, increasingly, we are seeing more and more appreciation of what the youth can offer, the solutions that can youth provide, and that we are realizing that yes, maybe we might need experience, but which youth lack, but that does not necessarily make them inadequate. They have something else. They have these fresh ideas that we need, which is just as important as the experience that we've always emphasized. And you will see that whether we're talking at the national level or local level or even international level, there is a great appreciation of how do we tap into these energies of young people? How do we tap into their talent? And so you will see people coming up with different policies to ensure youth inclusion and to ensure that youth are involved. You will see even international organizations like the United Nations. There is no single program now that you can talk about at the United Nations and fail to talk about how youth should be or are involved in it. Whether we're talking about UN youth delegates, whether we're talking about the World Bank youth-to-youth platforms, whether we're talking about at the national levels, national youth councils, whether we're talking at the local level where we are emphasizing youth participation. So there is increasing appreciation of the importance of young people. And I think we need now to move away from just having young people present in terms of their numbers or in terms of their age, and also start making sure that it is meaningful participation. It is meaningful engagement. And like Clover did say, that it is not just having a young person in the room. It is not just having these fashionable statements that we need to empower the youth, but doing the hard work of having the right policies, having the right programs, putting in resources, providing these young people with information, providing these young people with knowledge and skills that can enable them to play their role more effectively. Thank you, Anjiro.
Muted. Thank you so much, Raphael, for that passionate invocation. And now, Mucha, I'm going to move to you, come to you and ask, it's really clear now that solving problems for young people isn't working as well as trusting them to be leaders so that they can be the solution. But we actually need to learn to trust young people to lead, because young people best understand their own problems and we therefore need to put them in charge. What actions can youth take to engender greater trust from supporters?
Thanks, Wanjiru. I think trusting young people to lead is a critical insight, especially when you look at the African continent, where 70% of our population is under the age of 30, and about half of these young people actually lack jobs. The population in Africa, the population of young people in Africa continues to grow, and is growing so fast that it's said that half of the world's young people will be living in Africa by 2040. That's quite a startling statistic. I think for me, in order for young people to build trust with their supporters, they must believe in themselves first. I'm really excited when I listen to young people like Clover and Raphael, and I hear about platforms like Force of Nature, where young people are able to freely express themselves and to express those emotions that make very many of us feel extremely uncomfortable. I think, when you look at how we have grown, especially those of us who are a little older, we're not so comfortable with emotions that make us feel uncomfortable. And I wouldn't be myself as an emotional intelligence fanatic if I didn't really emphasize this point, that young people need to find platforms that allow them to freely express themselves and express themselves in the way that they feel to express themselves, and not allow themselves to be put in a box and express themselves in a way that society feels appropriate. I think young people need to understand that they are the change that we need, and they must take up their position of leadership. And this is leadership not just by title. I mean, title is great. When you're invited to the platform, when you're invited to the table, that's great. But leadership is also just by action, by the choices that young people make. And, even as they fight for, and as we have more and more leaders who are mindful of the importance of bringing young people into the equation, I would challenge young people to start taking up positions of leadership from action rather than waiting for title. Trust is built by repetitive action, right? So when you follow up your words with action, when you do what you say you will do. Trust is also built when you demonstrate competency. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you will get things right all the time. It's just showing up and doing the best possible that you can, and then asking for help when you need it. Trust is also built by authenticity, being yourself. And I think this is a point I would really want to emphasize and highlight as extremely important. I want to encourage young people to be authentically themselves. I think that often young people find themselves in spaces of leadership. Maybe they're the token young person, or they are few in number, where they are being forced to kind of fit into a box. But what makes young people so powerful, what makes young people so integral to the conversation is their diversity, is the way they look at things differently, is the way they react to things differently. And I think that for me, one of the ways that young people can continue to build trust is to be authentic, to be fully themselves and express themselves, and not trying to conform, however tempted they are to toe the line. So trust, like I said, is built by the actions you take. Trust is built by demonstrating competency. And more importantly, trust is built by being authentically yourself.
Powerful words, powerful words. Trust is built through repetitive action. Now, I'm going to come back through with one last round of questions for each of our panelists. But as I prepare to do that, I want to encourage our participants, our audience members, to really take to the chat function to post your questions there, because after this this last round of questions, the floor will be yours. And so please listen keenly. What are those burning questions you've had for a while, or that are being triggered by what you're hearing from our panelists here that you'd want to engage with them on? Again, an eminent panel, award-winning panelists here. What a great opportunity to really engage in depth. Now, coming to you, Raphael, young people have already been confronting numerous challenges, such as access to education and employment, conflict, inequality, and struggling to have their voices heard and initiatives meaningfully supported. What is the significance of building visibility and credibility for the issues that matter to youth and for youth leaders themselves? In your experience, what platforms have you found work? And how can youth leaders and young people in general get themselves on these platforms?
Thanks so much, Wanjiru. Thanks so much, Wanjiru. First, I want to agree with you that across the world, young people are stepping up and taking action. And that is something that is extremely encouraging, that young people are not waiting for change to just happen. Young people are taking action because they believe that the future of our planet, the future of our communities, the future of our society depends on them and depends on the action that they take. And we see a lot of that across the world, across this continent, and in many, many places. So that is quite encouraging. I think a couple of things I just want to first encourage young people. That we are pushing to be involved and to get involved. For example, having a seat at the table. I think we also have a challenge as we make these demands. That, for example, when you get a seat at the table, don't just warm the seat, utilize it. Don't just add to the numbers. Bring in something new. Don't just conform. Let's see the difference between a young people being in the room and not having young people in the room. I am a great proponent of youth leadership, for example, but I have argued that youth leadership cannot just be based on age. Youth leadership must also be about vision, must also be about value. What is it that is different that you're bringing on the table? What is it that you are doing differently from what we've seen the older generation or the adult generation do that we do not like or we do not agree with? So I think we also have that responsibility to make sure that when we get these opportunities, we use them well. And I would say that it doesn't have to be anything big. Change, they say, starts in small places closer home. Wherever you are, in your small village, be the change that you've been pushing for. If you are lucky to become the UN Secretary General, be the change. there. But don't wait to get to that level. Wherever you are at your level, be the change that we are looking for. Because there is this assumption that we have to wait until we have a platform, until we have titles, until we have profiles, until we have status for us to be change makers. I think we shouldn't wait for that. Wherever we are in your own, even if you're just the monitor or in your class, let's see the kind of leadership that is so different that one would say, if this guy became the president of our country, or if this guy became the president of the World Bank, things are going to change. Just because they've seen the way you are leading at that level, because they say you will be up there, what you are down here. So it is very, very important that you start demonstrating that the leadership that we need is not going to wait until we have those big titles. And so where are these platforms? I think we should, like I said, let's start at the local level, let's keep moving at the national level, and when we get at the international level, if you're given, like Clover was saying, if you're given an opportunity to speak at the UN General Assembly, people should not just see you at the UN General Assembly. When people trace back, they should be able to see you continuing to make change at your own community, in your own community, at the village, so that it is not just a one-off show. This is a continuous, consistent, and a constant process that we are engaged in. And so I think opportunities are available, platforms are available, and again, we shouldn't just wait for platforms that have already been created. We should also create our own platform. Just like they say, if they don't give us seats at the table, let's move in with our folded chairs, or let's just create a new table all the same. And so they'll be forced to join us. Take an example of social media. And the adult generation always locked young people out of their spaces. Young people have created a powerful platform on social media, and all the generation are now forced to come in there. So I think it is very, very important that we look at the platforms that exist, but also create our own new platforms.
They don't do that.
Thank you, Raphael. Bring something to the table, add value, bring a vision to the table. Now, Mucha, I'm going to move to you. You are passionate about empowering young people to take ownership of a positive future. The question is, how can different stakeholders help young leaders build their confidence?
Thanks, Wanjiru. Yeah, I think one of the key things that we need to do is we need to support young people and constantly remind them that they're an integral part of the solution. We cannot develop as a continent, we will not develop across the globe if youth are not front and center of the solution. I think that it's really important for stakeholders, and especially those who have the power to do so, to ensure that they bring young people to the table. We've heard stories about the young people who've just made the decision that they're not waiting for the invitation, they're just gonna step up. But we could do a lot more by actually engaging them in decision making, not as a token, but in the truest sense, truly listening and taking what they say as something extremely important. There's nothing quite as confidence building than engaging with someone or engaging in a space where your word is taken seriously as a young person. I know that a lot of the opportunities that I received as I was coming up in my career made me feel so much stronger, made me feel so much more confident when I was in a space where I was received fully and embraced fully. So I think it's important that we see young people as equals, as fully capable. Raphael said earlier, not to see them as people bringing problems, but the ones who have the solution to those problems. More than ever before, young people are innovative. They are coming up with some of the brightest ideas to some of the most pressing problems we have, especially across our continent. I think that in order to support young people, we need to understand that their approach is different, and that different is not bad. Different is just different, right? Young people aren't necessarily going to see things the way you see them. Give them the space to be able to fully be themselves. I think it is very crippling to invite young people to the table and then expect them to behave like you do, to expect them to think like you do. What you do then is you destroy their confidence. So allow them to be themselves. I'm very big on this idea of authenticity. and allowing individuals to fully be themselves. I think support them and build their capacity to contribute. So where you are in a space where you feel young people aren't necessarily showing up as well as they can, take them aside, build their confidence, be it one-on-one, for example, if you are sitting on a board and you feel the young person who's there isn't necessarily showing up as best as they can, build their capacity to contribute. But at the same time, don't expect them to have all the answers. Clover earlier shared how she had a leader who brought her in and invited her into spaces and didn't necessarily expect her to, show up in a certain way at the beginning, right? So open up these spaces and then allow young people to learn. Allow young people to make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, don't look at them as though it's the end of the world, because we learn from the mistakes we make. So I think another way we can build confidence is creating a space where young people are truly free to be innovative, free to make mistakes. And when they make those mistakes, to be allowed to learn from them, and for us to focus on the learning from the mistake. I think the last thing I will add is, we must support young people, and hold them accountable, right? So hold them accountable to the different choices that they're making, hold them accountable to the decisions. And when we do that, we also build their confidence. I think that the greatest support we can give is really just to open up these spaces and then allow young people to be themselves, to be authentically who they are, and to explore what leadership is. A lot of leaders want to behave as though they just landed and arrived as a leader. But the reality is they didn't. There was a growing phase. And in that growing phase, they made mistakes. And we must allow young people to be able to do that. And that will build their confidence.
Powerful words, powerful words. Support young people and then hold them accountable. Those two things at the same time. Now, Clover, I'm coming to you next, and this is the last question of the session to the panelists before we move into the Q&A. So to our participants, please do post those questions on the Q&A section on Zoom or even on Facebook. Clover, you are our youngest panelist, and I know that so many young people listening to you right now. A lot has been highlighted during this conversation, and now would like to once again hear from you. What kind of solidarity do you think is helpful and supportive to young people? Is this about making introductions with influential people? Is this financial? How can we begin to play our part in activating meaningful youth engagement?
Thank you for the question. I could definitely riff off what our past two panelists have said for the next 3 hours. So I'm going to try and be as concise and to the point as possible. I think it very simply starts with asking what young people need. I know that sounds super obvious, but a lot of people forget to do it. It's kind of like, oh, we'll build out this initiative or we'll do X, Y, Z without ever checking in with the stakeholders you're trying to serve. I think we have this general approach of trying to solve the problems removed from them from the top down. And it's often as simple as saying, what would you actually need to feel supported? And from the young perspective, you can initiate that yourself as well. So a lot of the work that we do at Force of Nature is understanding which stories we subscribe to about the world and about our role in it as individuals that keep us from realizing our potential to create change. And there are lots of stories that we subscribe to, whether that is that the system is too broken or that it's not my fault, it's not my responsibility, or often in the young people I work with, it's, I'm not smart enough or experienced enough. I don't have all of the answers. And then what we invite young people to do is actually begin to challenge those stories themselves. So what evidence would you need to create to disprove that story? And rather than attaching that to something outside of your control, so, well, if this leader did this thing, or if that opportunity came across my desk, what would I need to do right now to actually challenge that assumption? If the story is that you're, too small to make a difference, that you're not smart enough, that you're not experienced enough, what do you need to do within yourself to actually change that narrative? It could be as simple as diving into the skills that you do have, identifying where you do have weaknesses, and then beginning to, develop your own solutions and really initiate that change yourself. And so I really do feel that it starts with going directly to the stakeholders, but more generally to make a kind of universal assumption about young people. I think what many of us are really lacking right now is vision. So when I ask my parents about the future they imagined, it was one of, flying cars and disease being eradicated. And when I talk to 8 and 9-year-olds in the classroom today, the vision they describe is something out of a dystopian blockbuster. So they're talking about empty supermarket shelves. They're describing cities underwater, food system collapse. They're talking about a planet in decline and the kind of place no one wants to grow up in, no one wants to inherit. And I think that is because, especially in the context of climate change and ecological breakdown, all of the content we're consuming is very much doomsday-esque, right? It's fear-mongering. It's that we have a limited amount of time to create so much change. And young people are really internalizing that and metabolizing that by way of feeling despairing and feeling that we really are inheriting this kind of dystopia. So I do feel that it is the responsibility of anyone trying to support a young person to help them actually begin to realize what that alternative could look like, and then support them to think about, okay, what do I need to begin to do right now, not tomorrow, but right now, today, to bridge between where we stand today and where we want to get to tomorrow.
Fantastic. As I was listening to you describe that dystopian future, I want to do a real quick test with our participants. I'm going to ask a question. Think about movies that have been made in the last 10, 15, 20 years. Sci-fi movies. Some of you may or may not be consumers of the genre. And tell me any fantasy sci-fi movie that's come out that has described a positive future. Often it is said that Hollywood movie making industry, it really holds up our imagination and throws it back at us. Can you think of a fantasy, a sci-fi movie that posits a positive future? A future that we want to live in? Can you come up with any? Put it in the chat to the participants. Put it in the chat. Is anyone thinking of any? Recent movies. For me and my age group, recent is the last 15 years. Oh, come on. Someone come up with something. Is it really true we're imagining just all doom and gloom?
It's hard to think of anything else.
There's one. There's one. I wonder if anyone's going to come up with it. Oh, come on, guys.
Yeah, someone has it.
Someone has put
You got it. Anthony Muth. Yes. Anthony Clare. Yes. Black Panther. And it's really interesting that is the only movie that is set in the future that is giving us a positive telling of a future tomorrow. And almost everything else that's coming out really is not as optimistic. So really to Clover's point. Now, we have 9 minutes left for this session. And what I want to do is I'm going to group the questions that have come up in the chat into kind of lumps or themes that I'm seeing emerging, and give each one of you panelists 2 minutes each to speak to any or all of them. And I know the panelists are also seeing some of the questions out there. One group of questions is around social media. And if I can look at this, how can youth utilize social media to make their voices heard? And there's a piece also someone talked about, and I want to lump this together, politicians talking about slay queens and really dragging out the worst of youth culture and holding the worst up as being the totality of youth. And I'd love to hear you speak to that. There's also a really interesting conversation happening about privilege and opportunity. And how do we navigate the reality that, yes, this opportunity, we're asking youth, go seize the opportunity, go take the opportunity, go create the opportunity, is often hindered and hampered by privilege or lack of access to privilege. And that's something Clover started off reminding us. The role of privilege in access to opportunity is something we kind of got in this mess because we weren't paying attention to. Another theme that's coming out is around engaging government, whether it's engaging government around natural resource management in the way that Professor Wangari Maathai did, or even around entrepreneurship, and again, access to entrepreneurial opportunity, access to capital. That's another group of questions that's coming up. And then how do we inculcate a culture of upholding values and leading by example into the youth? And what other avenues do we have to support young people into meaningful and influential, impactful, positive leadership? So those are the kind of groups of questions that have come out of the chat, out of audience engagement. Let me give each one of you 2 minutes to go through that. So that'll give us 6 minutes. And then I'll eat into a couple of more minutes at the end to give you 30 seconds to give your parting shot. Mucha, let me start with you.
There's so much that has been said, and I love the discussion that's going on, because I think it means that we are headed in the right direction as far as young people are concerned. I'm not sure that in the 2 minutes I can speak to everything, so perhaps let me just pick what I can speak to, and then the other panelists can speak to the other areas. So I think for me, one of the things that I would challenge young people is that, you know, the key here, and I think it's Kiprono Lagat who said, is that living on purpose is the only way to live. And I think that it's really key to really spend time thinking about what your why is. You know, in the work that I do, the work of emotional intelligence, what we know is that your why fuels your behavior. When your why is very clear, it actually speaks to the choices you will make on a day-to-day basis, because you will seek to ensure that you're constantly making choices that are aligned to your why. The other thing I would say is, as young people, don't get discouraged by the noise. Don't get discouraged by the noise. I think if you look at the late Wangari Maathai, you know, she focused on her why and did not allow the noise to distract her. Yes, it's true. There are those who are young people who will be elevated to positions of power and who will not necessarily utilize that space. There are those who will kind of tarnish the name of young people. But don't allow that noise to detract you from focusing on achieving your why, your purpose. I think that the key is to be that little hummingbird and do what you are able to do in the space where you are able to do it. And the more you focus on that, the more you can create a ripple effect by the choices you make. I think that young people can be great examples to the other young people around them. And so I think the focus should be more on just do what you're able to do, and don't allow the noise that is going on around you. Don't allow the naysayers who would argue that, look, here we go, here we put a young person and look at what they've done. Don't worry about that. Focus on what you are doing. And I think the key way to focus on what you're doing is to just constantly remind yourself of your why. Your why will keep you going when you get discouraged, right? Your why will keep you going when you're facing hurdles. So I think for me, that's the thing that I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mucha. Raphael, to you, and then we'll close with Clover, and then a 30-second parting shot.
Social media, again, an indication of one of the powerful tools that we have, but an indication of what we have. Many a times as young people, we look at what we lack and stick there. I think we must also realize some of the things that we have, and social media is one of them. We can use it to create awareness, pass information, mobilize, to organize, but most importantly, we must realize that that is just one platform, that is just one tool. We must also go out of that platform and do, and use the other spaces and platforms that do exist. But definitely social media is a powerful one. Holding government accountable, yes, we must realize that as citizens, young citizens, we are not helpless, we are not powerless. In fact, it is said that the greatest office in any democracy is that of citizens. So we need to use our powers to hold the government accountable, to provide and deliver for us as citizens. Three is about change, and just building on what Mucha did say, and what Professor Wangari Maathai did say and do, is that change don't just happen. We need to take action, but again, change won't just happen one day. Change it takes a long time sometimes, but you have to keep doing your bit. Like Professor Wangari Maathai did say, your little thing, do it, do your part, play your part. You might not change the world today, but the actions you're taking today will inspire someone somewhere to also take action. And if all of us take action, then we are likely to see change even much faster. In terms of upholding values, of course, we demand of certain actions and behavior and values from other people. We must also hold ourselves to those very same standards as young people. Like I did say, we want to see better, but we must not imagine that other people are going to do better and us, we will remain at the same level. So we must also hold ourselves to those standards and hold ourselves accountable. And lastly is that we must not wait, and we must not be in the waiting room. We must be restless whenever we see injustice. We must be restless whenever we see things not working out right. And like Mucha did say, we must not conform. We must not wait to be we must not be told that we need to behave. When you see something is not right, I think you need to act. And if that causes restlessness amongst people, so be it, but we must take action. Thank you so much, Wanjiru.
Thank you, Raphael. Clover.
So some of this will be repetitive, but I really feel that one of the huge challenges, mindset challenges of taking action on climate, taking action on biodiversity, social justice, is that we conflate fault with responsibility. So no matter who we are, whether we're a young person, someone in power, often we think, well, the problem isn't my fault, ergo it's not my responsibility. But the problem is ultimately nobody's fault. That's the reality, but it is the responsibility of each and every one of us. So long as we have skill, so long as we have passion, determination, access to resources, it is our responsibility to become custodians of that future by our own design and to show up with tenacity and grit and determination. So I think that kind of reframe of shifting from fault to responsibility is a really powerful one. You know, there's this quote from Spider-Man that, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. But I would argue the opposite. You know, with responsibility comes your power, because every time you make a problem someone else's problem, you make climate change someone else's problem, you give away that power. So right to Raphael's point, you know, don't wait for someone else to fix the problem. You know, it might as well be you. It might as well be you who steps up and takes ownership. Because ultimately the world is only ever changed by people who actually assume responsibility, who take ownership. You know, no one is born a brilliant leader. They're just individuals who decided to make themselves responsible. So I'd really encourage anyone listening in to really get clarity of what that problem looks like for you. And finally, I think one of the great sources of overwhelm, and I see this every time I go on Twitter or Instagram, is that you're inundated with lots of different issues that you want to care about. And yet ultimately, to have impact, you must have focus. So whether you are a young person, whether you're someone with existing influence, each and every one of us has power, and that power lies in saying, actually, this is the problem I'm going to take on, and this is the problem and the solution that I'm going to take ownership of.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And now 30 seconds. And in your 30 seconds parting shot, I would love it if you could center Professor Wangari Maathai. Mucha, I'll start with you.
Sorry, Wanjiru, I didn't hear the last bit you said.
In your 30 seconds parting short, I'm going to ask you to center Professor Wangari Maathai.
I think for me, the key thing is to really understand your why. As Clover says, there is so much going on out there. Focus on what your why is, focus on the one thing that you can contribute to, and just be like that hummingbird, as Professor Wangari Maathai said, and do your part. As you do your part, you will be amazed at the ripple effects that your little part has.
Brilliant, brilliant. Raphael.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I think just centering and building on the great legacy of Professor Wangari Maathai. One is to play your part. Play your part. It is extremely important. Don't wait for anyone else. Don't ask for anyone else to do anything. Just play your part. It is extremely important. She also said that we need to shift to new levels of consciousness. Truly looking at the world as it is now, for us to be able to cause any meaningful change, we need to shift to new levels of consciousness. And so as a young generation, I think we must rebel against the bad behaviors of the adult generation that we don't like, and shift to new levels of consciousness. But having said that, I also want to say that I'm constantly inspired by some young people who are taking action. You know, the Clovers, the Waduti, the Vanessas of this world gives us great hope that change is going to come even soon. And so young people should never give up. We should continue playing our part, like Professor Wangari did say. Keep moving, keep taking action. Thank you.
Fantastic. And Clover.
For me, the word that encapsulates Wangari Maathai's legacy is that of courage. And I love the word courage because at its heart is cœur, in French meaning the heart. And so I think any change that we do create in the world has to come from a place of heart and love, as much as it does our agitation and our anger about the problems. And so I would invite each and every person listening in today, and I think each of the panelists and you too, Wenjur, really encapsulate this. We need to go forward with a vision, and we need to invite people. We can condemn the problems, but equally we need to create an invitation that says, this is the world that is possible, and here's how each and every one of us can really be part of that love-filled and courageous movement to create change.
Fantastic. Dear friends, panelists, participants, we have come to the end of what I believe has been a stimulating, insightful, inspiring session. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have taken some reflections away from this discussion to motivate you towards achieving your purpose. If you're inspired to learn more about the work, our work at the Wangari Maathai Foundation and ways to support us, please visit our website. We do rely on the generosity of individuals such as yourself to keep the legacy of Professor Wangari Maathai alive, and we are grateful for all donations. Again, the biggest donation today has been from our panelists who have given us to us of their time, of their talent, of their wisdom. Thank you so much to our participants. Thank you for the gift of your attention and your time. With that, I'm going to sign us off. And thank you once again, right on time. Well, a little late, but not
Thank
too
you all
bad.
so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Liz, are you there?
Yes.
How, so, oh,
That was amazing.
are we live still or?
We are not live.
We are not live on
but
Facebook, but quite a number of participants are still on, so you might want to hold a bit.
Okay.
Can we make it a whole day next time?
Actually, one of the things I'd love to do is if I could get everyone else to get back on the speakers. Where'd she go?
Oh, Clover.
Clover. Did she log off? I wanted to take a picture.
Oh yeah, that would be nice.
Can we get Clover back on?
Yes, just give me a minute.
Okay.
And Wanjiro, you are an amazing moderator. That was really, really good. You should start your own TV show, you know.
That was awesome. That was a
No,
great.
I'm really glad I was having internet issues earlier, and I'm really glad that those did not get in the way.
Yeah, no, but you did very, very well. A show is just as good as, of course, the panelists, but also the moderator, and you did very, very well. The energy, and that you didn't hog the light, you know, and that you didn't discuss the issues you were facilitating. That was amazing. So,
Oh, thank you. Hey, I need you in my life more. Hey, man. My self-esteem is through the roof.
Great.
Haters
Hey,
won't tell you.
Wanjira,
You are amazing, all of you. Really good.
we
Great
did it.
Hey, Wanjira.
Nugget, I couldn't tweet fast enough. You guys were all everything you said was tweetable. I was like, oh my God. Well
These
done.
guys are on fire.
Just give me
They
2 minutes. I'm trying to remove everyone else, so we remain with the panelists. So in a
Yes,
minute,
bye.
that should be good.
Enjoy the photograph. See you later. Thanks, Mucha.
Wait,
Thanks.
Nani, Wanjira, don't go yet.
Oh,
We want you in the photo.
yeah. Wow.
Alafu Liz umeenda wapi?
I'm trying to get Clover back. I
Ah.
hope I get her back, but we have some screenshots also in case we don't get her.
Just 2 participants left. I'm gonna remove them, and then in a minute we should be good to go.
Thank
Can
you.
put them. Ah.
And now we are good. Only the panelists left.
I can't get her.
No, I will
Oh,
be.
too bad.
Okay.
It's
So
all right.
If you can put on your videos and then you smile, and I'll take a screenshot. Just keep smiling, keep smiling. We are almost there.